Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit with another episode of What Are We Eating? Today, we're trying Boston Market's Meatloaf dinner that comes with mashed potatoes and traditional brown gravy. The Meatloaf dinner weighs 14 ounces and costs $2.50. An old favorite recipe, now even better. Our meatloaf is created from deliciously seasoned ground beef and pork, then topped with a rich and delicious traditional brown gravy that's sure to satisfy. It wouldn't be complete without a side of our signature mashed potatoes. Here's the list of ingredients, and there's a whole bunch of them. But as I was reading through the ingredients in the meatloaf, I started to get excited because I didn't see any TVP. Well, that was until I reached the end of the ingredients, and there it is, textured vegetable protein. Well, like I've said recently, TVP hasn't been that bad lately, so let's keep our fingers crossed for this meatloaf. And then there's the rest of the ingredients for the mashed potatoes and the gravy. The whole Boston Market meatloaf and mashed potato meal has 430 calories, 23 grams of total fat, 10 grams of saturated fat, 1 gram of trans fat, 70 milligrams of cholesterol, 1,680 milligrams of sodium, 37 grams of carbohydrates, 2 grams of fiber, 3 grams of sugars, and 19 grams of protein. What is the deal lately with the sodium in these frozen meals? 1,680 milligrams in this meal. This meal and most frozen meals I've tried lately have been just under 2,000 milligrams, or in some cases over 2,000 milligrams. That's a whole lot of sodium in one meal. Sodium doesn't affect everyone the same way, but some people could never eat a meal like this. And here's the picture that Boston Market has on their website, and it looks delicious. Hopefully, it really does look like this and taste good. You can heat these meals in the microwave or the oven, and for you, the people, we're doing them both ways, so you don't have to. So the first one's going into a preheated 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. The second meal is going into the microwave for 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, flip the patties over, but do not stir the potatoes. Then recover, and it goes back in the microwave for 4 more minutes, then it rests for 1 to 2 minutes. After 30 minutes in a preheated 350-degree oven, we're ready to stir the potatoes. That's weird. On one of the meals, they tell you to stir the meat, and then the other one, they tell you to stir the potatoes. Once the potatoes are mixed, recover and cook for another 15 minutes. After microwaving for a total of 8 minutes and resting for another 2 minutes, our first meal is ready. And of course, Mrs. Wolfpit had to do her thing and check the internal temperature of the meat. And as you can see, it's more than done. It's over 200 degrees. Mrs. Wolfpit said the gravy looked gross, but to me, it looks better than most gravies in other frozen dinners. We both tried the gravy on its own, and Mrs. Wolfpit, who puts salt on everything, but she said the gravy was very salty, which was surprising to me, because I also thought it was salty, but I didn't think it was very salty. Now, the last time I did a video on a Boston Market frozen meal, the mashed potatoes were fantastic, but these look a little dry and clumpy. But if they're really dry, that's what the gravy's for. We scooped up a load full of mashed potatoes, and up close, they don't look as dry as they did while we were mixing them. And after tasting them, they weren't dry at all. They were just the opposite. They were moist, creamy, and nice and thick, the way I like mashed potatoes. There's nothing worse than runny mashed potatoes. These potatoes are about as homemade tasting as you're going to get in a frozen meal. Now let's try the meatloaf, and as you can see, it's super tender when Mrs. Wolfpit cut off a chunk. We took a bite from the chunk, and it was good. The texture was nice and tender, rather than an overworked, dense, tough piece of ground meat. The flavor of the meatloaf was good, which the gravy really complemented, and the meatloaf toned the saltiness down some. Then we went in for a bite of the meatloaf, gravy, and the delicious mashed potatoes together. And don't forget, there's another slice of meatloaf under the gravy. Everything in one bite was really good. Now after cooking in a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes, our second meatloaf meal is ready. And this meal was also up to 200 degrees. When we were mixing the potatoes, you can see how some of the gravy or the potatoes started to form a crust. Well, at least I hope that's what it is. So I give that spoonful a try. Then Mrs. Wolfpit got a spoonful of her own. And these potatoes actually seem to be creamier than the ones cooked in the microwave. I wouldn't have expected that. But again, these potatoes, like in the microwave meal, were delicious. And again, the meatloaf was fork tender, and the texture and the flavor was exactly the same as it was in the microwave. And then, of course, we had to have our final bite with the meatloaf, the gravy, and the mashed potatoes. And it was delicious, just like the first meal. Other than the potatoes being a little bit more moist in the oven-cooked version, these meals were pretty much identical, cooked in the microwave and the oven. I kind of expected a little bit of rubberiness in the meatloaf that was cooked in the microwave, but that wasn't the case at all. This Boston Market meatloaf and mashed potato meal is pretty darn good, and the amount of food you get for $2.50, I think it's a bargain. Of course, with the sodium content the way it is, and some of the other nutrition facts, this is something you don't want to eat every day. So with all of that said, I'm giving the Boston Market meatloaf and mashed potato meal an 8 out of 10. Thank you all very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends, and I'll see you soon.